New Paradox DLC bad? Let's talk about why. Riding high off the waves of the new CK3 and Vic3 DLC, I think it's time to take a look introspectively at why they've completely fallen flat in terms of content, replayability, and mechanic expansion. But Logan, I hear you say, I enjoy the new DLC. Stop your whinging, stupid boy. Well, first off, that's not very nice, imaginary man. But secondly, I would actually have to agree with you. Colossus of the South is the first Vic3 DLC that isn't rated at mixed or below, not counting the music pack. And compared to CK3's DLC, Legacy of Persia, the reviews look great, but I would argue that both of the DLCs are fundamentally doing the same thing. That is, focusing on a single region to the exclusion of all others while not adding any new mechanics that like any nation can take advantage of, which I believe is disappointing and a sign of bad game design. Is what I would say if it was true. Just kidding, Vic3 crushes the competition. Long live Queen Victoria, baby. Woohoo! But for real, I actually really enjoy the Colossus of the South, not only because the game slaps, but also because it works to improve the entire game experience while focusing in on fleshing out a pretty large region of the game, South America. While being only $6, that's right, people, you can get it only $6 at your local Steam retailer. It's on your computer. It adds not only static events to Brazil, like the modernization of Brazil's industry and the abolition of slavery through the journal, but also allows you to explore South America in an emergent way through the addition of various formidable nations, historical characters, unique cultures, and of course, various ways to ruin the environment and exploit the great Amazon rainforest. This is in addition to the huge ways that 1.5 has changed the game's mechanics worldwide, like greatly improving the war system for the most part. Okay, we don't talk about naval landings here. Additions of a new company mechanic and a diplomatic option to trade states, among many other changes. $6, people. Compare this to the relatively disappointing CK3 DLC. The paid content focuses on the Persian region, a relatively small region of the world, even given the smaller scope of CK3's map due to, medieval people obviously didn't live anywhere but Europe and North Africa. Even with its smaller scope, it doesn't go any deeper than Vic3's DLC did. It adds the now repeated struggle mechanic in the game, a new dynastic legacy, new men-at-arms, as well as a crap ton of new events for the region. But to be fair, let's be real, the actual update, which we focus on for Vic3, so we might as well do it for CK3, while not jam-packed with a lot of features, does significantly change how clans, which is a government type in the game that amounts to about a third of the world using, so it's pretty significant. It changes how clans work, which is fantastic. It makes them much more distinguishable from feudal and tribe type governments, but even with this change, the changes still feel more lackluster than Vic's cheaper update. I mean, this DLC is $12, so why does it feel like it adds the same or less amount of content? I think the majority of dissatisfaction surrounding this DLC, at least coming from me, I can't speak for anyone else. I mean, I can, but it'd be some type of immoral. I could figure out a reason why it'd be immoral. The majority of dissatisfaction surrounding this DLC stems from the difference between Vic3's generative gameplay, there you go, fancy word or phrase, and CK3's static gameplay. Let me explain. Generative gameplay is when the game's mechanics function in such a way that the game becomes a sandbox. That's how I'm defining it. If you define it a different way, you're objectively wrong. For example, in England, industrialists rise up because capitalists are employed in the managing of an emerging industrial economy, not because the game hit the year 1840 and decided that the Industrial Revolution had to start or end. I think 1840 is when it ends. I don't know. It was an ad-lib, guys. Come on. Or in CK3's case, wars start because the kingdom is next to a weakened neighbor and takes advantage of it because they need more land. Not to say that the base games don't have a ton of static gameplay too. I mean, all games have to have static gameplay. That's like kind of what makes up like the core of it, in my opinion. CK3, of course, has the infamous, in my opinion, Mongol Empire that just sprouts up at a predetermined date, which admittedly is very, very silly. And not one of my favorite mechanics, I can't even lie, but it's there. While Vic3 contains various casus bellis like Unify Germany, Unify Italy, and now, of course, Unify Brazil. We also have Unify Scandinavia. These casus bellis, reasons for war, function differently from the rest of the game in a way that is while not static, is definitely shoehorned in there. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, again, but I believe that generative gameplay is much more important for replayability and just to have fun in general. Let's be real, would you rather roleplay conquering the world as a second coming of the Papal States or create Scandinavia for the 20th time? Because, well, I mean, that's the most efficient option. This question is rhetorical, by the way. You will agree with me, please and thank you. Now, games could, of course, add all these wacky, funky, cool options like Hoi 4 does in their rather absurd focus trees, but it's more satisfying to do it without specific mechanics railroading you into certain options. Center stage, the struggle mechanic. Act 1. There's only one act. He has no character arc thus far. I have to be honest with you, as I always am. I never lie. Continue developing a parasocial relationship. I will always have your back. Trust me. The struggle mechanic may be the functionally oddest mechanic ever put into a Paradox game, both for Persia and Iberia. A relatively short mechanic that is only in one start date that ceases to have an impact after it is completed. I almost like it. Keyword is very much the almost, but unfortunately it is just so static, which is quite odd considering it uses almost all of the game's implemented mechanics with like an arbitrary point system tacked on, so just it more adds like nuance onto the systems that are already in there, so it almost seems generative, but it is definitely not. I think that war is Crusader King's strong suit, right behind character roleplay, and to see both of these systems railroaded into a struggle so harshly is unfortunate. However, if I see a single comment disagreeing with me, I'm going to cry. And the reason for this is it doesn't matter whether the struggle mechanic is good on your first playthrough or bad on your first playthrough. It really doesn't. That's not the problem. Love it or hate it, the struggle is here to stay. And if you like it, I think that's totally valid. But you should put some comments in the comment section anyway to boost the video. That may or may not have contradicted my last statement. Don't worry about it. My main complaint is the time that the mechanic lasts for in its scope. At this rate, ain't no way the map is going to be filled with struggles, and if it is, what then? You either A, lose your sandbox, or B, have struggles scattered piecemeal throughout. Well, that's mostly the way I feel about it. But back to Vic 3, of course, a superior game. Praise Queen Victoria. Why is Vic 3 better? Well, if the pace keeps up, it's rapidly covering the world with interesting mechanics. I mean, South America by itself was a whole DLC. Like, that is a whole continent, guys. It is a huge part of the world. Like, just think about if CK3 had that level of DLC. Like, right now the community is pining for like a Byzantine DLC, and that is just like Anatolia and Greece and the lower Balkans, right? Like, come on, guys. Think a little bigger. Additionally, the content introduced feels less railroady. I think I'm going to catch some flack for that because I think that is definitely subjective. Yes, the journals strongly guide you along a path, but they can't be ignored. And while I wish nation formation was more organic, I can't really think of any other way to do it. If you think about it, every other Paradox game has had nation formations in the same way. Like, oh, you know, like even like CK3, you get like the Casus Belli to form the Roman Empire. It's like the most broken thing I've ever seen. And of course, you can generate your own empires. And CK3 actually has adapted pretty well with that, with the empire formation mechanic. But even then, it's lacking a little bit. Like Hoi 4, like that is like the most railroady way to do like nation formations, right? But I can't really think of any other way to do it. That's like, you know, resource efficient. Anyways, hope you enjoyed, and if you made it this long, you might as well subscribe. Also, as a disclaimer, I hate these games with every pound in my body. That's not the phrase, but we're rolling with it. And I really do want Paradox to fail, genuinely. I hope that was obvious. Like if you agree. Adios.